absolute cretins decide to inject themselves into the devastation in Los Angeles for one reason, to get their faces.
The logo's been nicked from Mallorca's crest of arms or something like that. And so she's changed it to being called As Ever. Yep, as corny and as cringe.
Now she's been accused of copying Hollywood icon Pamela Anderson after similarities were found between the trailer for Pamela's Cooking with Love venture and Meghan.
It wasn't a heated debate, a viral tweet, or a public feud. It was just one laugh. A single, quiet chuckle from Jaime Kern Lima that managed to say more than 100 headlines ever could. For Meghan Markle, it was a moment she didn't plan for, but one that may have defined how people see her now. Jaime didn't clap back, roll her eyes, or call her out. She simply laughed, the kind of laugh that only comes from someone who has been through the fire and doesn't need to prove anything anymore. And in that moment, the contrast between the two women was crystal clear. This wasn't just about a podcast exchange. It was about authenticity, branding, and the way the world reacts when a carefully crafted image meets someone who doesn't play along. Let's break down the 10 key reasons why that laugh hit so hard.
Harry's Sussex? I have no idea. And no, Meghan, no one knew that. Like, why are you correcting? You know.
Which is, I'm going to show you how to make a happy, warm, loving home after I have successfully severed my husband's ties from his entire family.
It's okay. It's not expensive like your clothes are.
Look at how fun that is.
During Meghan Markle's appearance on Jaime Kern Lima's podcast, things took an unexpected turn. Meghan made a subtle jab, implying Jaime was a user and a hypocrite. But instead of firing back, Jaime simply smirked and let out a dry, understated laugh. That sound landed harder than any confrontation could have. It wasn't loud or cruel. It was the laugh of someone who's seen this kind of game before. Listeners immediately picked up on it, sensing that Jaime's reaction carried the weight of lived experience and quiet confidence. In the age of outrage, silence or a knowing laugh can be more powerful than 1,000 words. It communicated that Jaime wasn't rattled, wasn't threatened, and certainly wasn't buying into Meghan's narrative. That brief moment encapsulated the theme of the entire exchange. Meghan was performing, Jaime was simply being herself, and the audience could feel the difference.
I am physically nauseated watching that clip. That is like a parody of what that show should be. I had to get it totally wrong to get it totally right. I just love, really one of my favorite things is doing small, wonderful acts of charity and kindness for people to let them know I'm thinking of them. You know, I love... What? You love Meghan. Someone pointed out on Twitter, I forget who it was, the woman who destroyed her in-laws' family, whose own family doesn't like her, whose the in-laws obviously don't like her, the public doesn't like her. She seems to be one of the more vindictive, sort of nasty figures in public life. What's the title of her show? Love Meghan. For what to watch? Who wants to watch Meghan Markle bake a pie? Even in the commercial, what's really wrong with this is all the little clips of her seem to attempt to show.
For Meghan, this was unfamiliar territory. This podcast wasn't her own show, where production, editing, and talking points could be tightly managed. It was Jaime Kern Lima's space. 2 women, 2 microphones, no filters. That lack of control seemed to unsettle Meghan. Without the protective bubble she usually operates in, her responses felt less polished and more reactive. This gave the audience a rare, unfiltered glimpse at how Meghan navigates conversations when she isn't steering them. Meanwhile, Jaime remained calm and composed, steering the dialogue naturally without trying to win the moment. This imbalance only amplified the impact of that famous laugh. It wasn't just a reaction. It was a reminder that some people don't need control to command a room. For Meghan, it revealed how much she depends on a curated environment to maintain her image. For Jaime, it showed she can thrive without one.
Something that I can create in front of my daughter and teach her what it's like to be a working mom. That's the goal.
To deploy with our huge freaking basket in our backyard garden that looks like Central Park.
Calling Jaime Kern Lima a user was more than just a verbal slip. It was a strategic misstep. Meghan seemed to underestimate her host, perhaps expecting that such a comment would rattle or provoke a defensive reaction. Instead, Jaime's reputation as a self-made, no-drama business leader made the insult look baseless. To those who know Jaime's story, the years of rejection, the risk of selling her home to fund her dream, and the eventual billion-dollar sale of IT cosmetics, the accusation felt absurd. This wasn't someone who had ridden on anyone else's coattails. The more Meghan pushed this narrative, the more the audience sided with Jaime. Rather than making her look shrewd, the comment came across as petty and misplaced. In the world of public perception, attacking someone whose credibility is bulletproof rarely works. And this moment was proof of that.
I was part of dance crews, all that stuff.
You were?
Yeah.
No one talks about all the dances that were such a big deal, not the actual dance.
Jaime Kern Lima isn't a celebrity because of a royal connection, a reality TV role, or viral notoriety. She's a businesswoman who built her empire from the ground up. Her most iconic moment? Wiping off all her makeup live on television to show her rosacea, texture, and redness. No filters, no editing, no shame. That raw honesty connected with millions of women and helped turn her brand into a billion-dollar success story. When Meghan tried to challenge Jaime's integrity, it clashed with everything people already knew about her. Jaime doesn't need to perform empowerment or sell a hardship narrative to gain respect. Her track record speaks for itself. And that's where the contrast becomes glaring. Jaime lives her empowerment quietly and consistently, while Meghan's approach often comes across as a media event. This difference was at the heart of why the laugh carried such weight.
So I don't know if you guys are watching this flower sprinkles Netflix show that she's got, but it's really revving people up.
Meghan Markle's public persona has evolved into a blend of curated vulnerability and passive-aggressive empowerment. Her speeches and interviews often focus on her own struggles, framed in ways that position her as both a survivor and a disruptor. Jaime, on the other hand, represents a completely different brand, one grounded in resilience, mentorship, and sincerity. She doesn't seek applause for helping others. She doesn't monetize every life lesson. This clash of brands was on full display during the podcast. Meghan's style felt performative in comparison to Jaime's grounded presence. The difference was so stark that listeners couldn't help but notice. One was speaking from a place of lived experience and quiet strength. The other seemed more invested in crafting a narrative. The tension between those two styles made Jaime's subtle dismissal resonate even more strongly with the audience.
Now she's been accused of copying Hollywood icon Pamela Anderson after similarities were found between the trailer for Pamela's Cooking with Love venture and Meghan.
In Hollywood and media circles, Meghan's brand no longer carries the same weight it once did. Early on, her story was fresh. An outsider marrying into royalty, speaking out against perceived injustices, and challenging tradition. But over time, the narrative began to feel repetitive. Empowerment, injustice, victimhood, repeat. Industry insiders have started to see her as unpredictable, not in a thrilling way, but in a risky one. Deals with Spotify and Netflix have faltered. Creative projects stall, press narratives conflict. This podcast moment with Jaime played into that growing perception. Meghan appeared defensive, reactive, and unwilling to adapt her message. Meanwhile, Jaime came across as steady, collaborative, and drama-free, exactly the qualities Hollywood executives value. The exchange became a microcosm of why Meghan's opportunities seem to be narrowing, while Jaime's influence continues to expand without even trying.
Complete opposite. I mean, that's just another one of the malarkey stories she sold to the royal family for sympathy.
Even with me growing up, it was so much fast food. And yes, I get when you're...
One of the most striking takeaways from the podcast was how authenticity translates in real time. Jaime Kern Lima doesn't have to sell her credibility. It's already baked into her career, her philanthropy, and her everyday choices. There are no leaked stories of behind-the-scenes drama, no feuds, no brand contradictions. Meghan's public image, however, often struggles under the weight of media controversies and accusations of control issues. This isn't just about perception, it's about trust. When someone like Jaime walks into a room, people believe what she says because it aligns with how she lives. That's the power of authenticity. And it's precisely why Jaime's laugh was so disarming. It came from a place of certainty, not defensiveness. The audience could sense that difference, and in the court of public opinion, that kind of truth is hard to compete with.
He says not since Harry and Meghan has Netflix given more money to someone without a specific plan.
This podcast highlighted a growing problem for Meghan, the perception that her empowerment messaging is more of a performance than a lived reality. Jaime's laugh was not dismissive of Meghan's pain. It was a rejection of the performance around it. In Jaime's world, empowerment isn't a brand. It's a life you live, often without recognition. In Meghan's case, the stories and speeches often circle back to her own hardships and betrayals. The repetition makes it harder for audiences to connect in a genuine way. Jaime's reaction exposed that gap. She didn't challenge Meghan's experiences, but instead signaled through that laugh that she wasn't playing along with a script. It was a subtle but powerful reminder that the world can tell when empowerment is authentic and when it's being packaged for consumption.
The logo is being nicked from Mallorca's crest of arms or something like that. And so she's changed it to being called As Ever. Yep, as corny and as cringe.
Behind the scenes, the entertainment industry is quietly shifting its stance on Meghan Markle. Producers, executives, and potential collaborators have grown wary. The reasons aren't always personal, they're often practical. Every project seems to come with added complexity: heavy brand control, media spin, and interpersonal strain. Meetings can feel more like negotiations over narrative than creative brainstorming. This fatigue has led to fewer calls, fewer offers, and more distance. Jaime's presence on that podcast offered a stark contrast. She came with no entourage, no drama, and no transactional vibe. For an industry that thrives on stability and efficiency, that difference is magnetic. The laugh wasn't just a personal moment. It became symbolic of why Meghan's brand feels heavy to manage and why people like Jaime are in increasingly high demand.
Absolute cretins decide to inject themselves into the devastation in Los Angeles for one reason: to get their faces. Stop getting off on the trauma porn of real suffering in Los Angeles.
Ultimately, Jaime's laugh acted as a mirror for Meghan Markle. It reflected the disconnect between the narrative Meghan is trying to maintain and the way it's landing with audiences now. Once, Meghan's presence could command a room with ease. Now it can make a room tense as people wonder which version they're going to get, the poised advocate or the defensive storyteller. Jaime's unbothered reaction underscored that shift. She didn't engage in the performance. She didn't offer validation. She simply signaled that she saw the reality beneath the branding. That's a difficult moment for anyone to face, especially when your public identity relies on maintaining a certain image. But it's also an opportunity, if Meghan chooses to take it, to strip away the performance and reconnect with something more real. Until then, moments like this will continue to define her public perception. In the end, Jaime Kern Lima didn't set out to destroy Meghan Markle. She didn't come into that podcast looking for a viral moment or a headline-making exchange, but her quiet, confident laugh ended up doing more damage to Meghan's image than any public critique could. It was a reminder that authenticity doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Jaime's success, resilience, and grace spoke louder than any scripted empowerment speech. For Meghan, this was more than an awkward moment. It was a turning point. The contrast between performance and reality was impossible to ignore, and audiences saw it clearly. Whether Meghan uses this as a chance to evolve or continues to double down on her current approach is yet to be seen. But one thing is certain. In a world full of noise, sometimes the quietest response leaves the deepest mark.